I think, is everyone on?
I think so.
Great. Hi, guys. Really excited to be here today to talk about the role of women in logic for media and fashion. I'm Christine. I'm the co-publisher of James Lane Post. And then I figured I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and say your name and what you do and the company you work for. Lori, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. I'm Lori Cecil Bonani. I am the founder of Elsis, which is a multidisciplined communications consultancy. I build and grow companies' reputations to increase awareness, business results, and credibility. And think of me as a non-traditional publicist working with fast-growing, high-impact VC-backed startups. I partner with my clients to help them raise their next round of funding, hire and retain top talent, and be noticed by potential and existing customers. Super happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Shannon, you want to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Shannon Bland. I'm the owner and editor of the Scout Guide Austin. We are a city guide dedicated to representing local businesses in different cities around the country. So I run Austin. There's 65 cities with these guides in this mission. We produce a print book each year. It's essentially a coffee table style book, has some pretty Pantones to draw the eye, but really has a goal of encouraging us to look within our city for the makers and the people that we can utilize, buy from, and support. Prior to, I had a career in public relations, some in-house and some agency. And I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you. Shama, you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, guys. I'm Shama. I'm the CEO and founder of Scaling Retail. For the last 10 years, I've been launching and scaling up primarily direct to consumer fashion and lifestyle brands. And I'd say one of the big trends this past year I've noticed is, last year we launched 6 brands, of which most of them were in the sustainability sector. So really excited about where things are heading with fashion.
Amazing. And then Jag?
Hi, yeah, thanks. I'm the CEO and founder of a technology company called Vertrue. And our goal is to empower a new generation of ethical businesses, big and small, enabling them to monitor their supply chains for abuses like child labor and poor environmental practices. And much like Shama, it's our thesis that every company will be a sustainability-led company going forward. So we're bringing data and hopefully some logic into companies that are creative like fashion to help them be more sustainable.
Incredible. Okay, well, with that, let's get started with our first question. With the world struggling in divisiveness, how can we use various mediums to remind us of the commonalities we have as humans? Jag, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. I think in the work that we do, the reason I love fashion is because it's so kind of right brain and left brain, right? Fashion is very much about sort of systems and processes, but it's also about creativity. And so what we're trying to do with our work is tell stories about how products are made to customers. And we do that using data. And so data and information is a really big part of telling the human story about how fashion is made. And so, like I mentioned before, we're very much focused on the human cost of fashion, okay, the workers behind the garments that we're made. And just to sort of make that concrete, I think it's really important that as customers, we consider our choices to be quite data driven. So if I'm buying a t-shirt in a store and it costs $5, I need to begin interrogating kind of, is it really worth $5? Like, what is the true cost of that t-shirt? And if we look at the components, which is a very logical thing to do, look at how something is made of materials and labor, for example. Are the workers being paid a fair wage? Are the materials that are being used good quality materials? And so, I think, I think that definitely we need to begin making better choices as consumers, and thereby influencing kind of better behavior and better practices that impact people that we may never see, right? We never see workers in the supply chain, but there's a big human cost.
Incredible. Absolutely. Lori, you want to jump in next on the question?
Sure. So my space is more on the media side. But in terms of, using these mediums is really focusing on accessibility, right? And it's not just in a way of seeing people, but just like wheelchairs have ramps, there are other ways to provide access to people in terms of communication. So whether it is you know making sure that things are available to people who may have hearing loss or sight loss, it's also making sure that there are different ways of reaching out to people to ensure that the message that you're intended to reach, the message that you intend to offer reaches the intended audience and properly, like not breaking down a game of telephone.
Excellent. Shama, you want to jump in?
Similar to Jag, in terms of fashion and communication, I think that there is something incredibly bridging. There's also something very culture shifting in terms of how fashion is reflective of, really where we are and where things are moving. And what I think is so exciting about looking at fashion as a bridge, or kind of the work that I do in there, there's something exciting about how we are creating not just the product and supply chain, but almost bridging together what Jag and Lori are doing, right? So it's how do we actually create something that's very consumer friendly and packageable? And I think one of the things that I have noticed has shifted so much in our space is fashion and products that were sustainable or focused on doing better business, often got branded and looked at through the lens of something that wasn't as sexy, something that wasn't as commercially desired. And I think this tremendous shift in terms of products like, one of the first, a Stella McCartney handbag that costs the same as another brand of handbag, but is made from all vegan leather, is a great example of values and aesthetics that are combined, I think, to make an impact towards something positive. So I'm gonna +1 both of these guys in terms of how this story ends up being told.
Yeah, and I think to your point, Shama, I think, years ago when you said sustainability, or, people kind of went to this like kind of hippie granola-esque, like not fashionable or not where we are now when it's more trendier. And I completely agree with you. Shannon, you want to jump in?
Yeah, like Lori, I'm more on the media side and kind of see it from like a high level news when we talk divisiveness. But I think the environment today just makes us feel like we're in this survival mode, right? We're always stressed, feeling like we're falling behind, or like, I don't know, we can never catch up. The news cycle is on this constant loop of negativity over here. And for us at the Scout Guide, we're really focused on sharing these positive messages and trying to remind, I guess, the people in Austin that we can still thrive in this environment. It's relative. It's, hard to believe, but we had bad days before the pandemic too. And we need to kind of work together to figure out, how we're going to move forward. And so hopefully there are some people that still agree that our most natural way of being is through compassion. And so I think for us, with the small businesses that we bring on board, with the articles that we share, with the interviews that we do, with whatever we're putting out, it's just being sensitive to that, being like radically for others and for positivity of others, rather than looking for ways to get clicks and divide. And so we often go back to the things that we're producing and say, yes, this article, this book, this interview is for the goal of being radically for somebody else, for whether that's promoting a small business or promoting an individual in the city who deserves it. And Shama mentioned this, but I think we're all drawn to companies today that are value-based and impact-based. And that really, I think, helps close that divide, because it's something we really do all agree on. Like, as she mentioned, the handbags, like we really should be being more mindful. And so I love being on the local side and being on the positive local mindset side, because I think it's a very agreeable mindset, and it's fun and easier to sell.
Awesome. Well, that kind of leads into my next question, which is, as we are seeing a great deal of rebranding amongst companies, et cetera, how do we approach this new year with brands that are in alignment with our values and commitment to impact? Laura, you want to kick it off?
Sure. I think in terms of The impact is really doing what you say and saying what you do. I know there's a good example. HubSpot has a really nice page on their website all about how they are striving to be a more diverse and sustainable company. And at the bottom in the and they have a section written that says, in full disclosure, we should have done this sooner, and we're not the company we want to be yet, but we're striving towards that. And I think that being transparent about that, but making a difference, what's the quote? Like, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So I think that that's something that companies should really focus on. And as somebody that helps companies with their reputations, it's something that's absolutely top of mind.
Shannon, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think on the topic of, coming off of the last panel and hearing everything about the greener future from our lens, it's just printing annually. So not, we're having these urge from people that are like, we really love it, make a Christmas edition. Do you have a summer edition? Do you have a travel edition? And it's like, no, we're really going to keep where we are. We print annually, we use recyclable paper, we pay extra for it. We know it doesn't help our bottom line to use it, but it's you pay for it anyway later, right?
Yeah.
And so for us, again, kind of echoing what I said last time, but it's an easier message to sell. I mean, local spending keeps money in the economy. It's better for the environment. It creates jobs. Local produce reduces food miles traveling. So there's a ton of data behind shopping local being better for our environment. And so that's just something that we continue to push, is just being more mindful all around. Small choices.
Thank you. Jag, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would say to kind of entrepreneurs that are starting businesses or have existing businesses, kind of design of businesses to be more sustainable, especially with the kind of unsexy things like sourcing, supply chain, vendors, and building relationships, right? And rewarding relationships. We saw the mess that happened during the pandemic with the big companies canceling so many orders and not managing their vendors properly. So that needs to be a thing of the past. So I think conscious design in systems, but also investing in relationships. And then on the consumer side, just kind of buying less and buying quality. I mean, it's hard to do in this current kind of social media driven world that we live in, but I think it's key.
Great. Shama?
Yeah, one of my gripes is is that products that tend to be better for the planet can also and are also largely inaccessible to a huge majority of people on this planet because of price points. And so I think for me, one of the things that I think is so important is, yes, we can communicate and brand, companies that have the capabilities to create these amazing products, and they're charging a certain price, and that might be premium because of the values and the ethics. But for me, I really hope for a future where we can, and this word is very much overused, but democratize access to products that are better for the planet at a much lower price point. And I do think that when we are able to offer to that Walmart consumer a viable option across multiple product categories that are doing better for the planet, but don't have to be such a huge income trade-off, a cost trade-off, and then we're going to really be able to see a lot of much bigger shifts in our market. So I do think, in terms of education, we are getting smarter. We say so many things about the world and about people, but I think we are getting better. I think things are improving in terms of how we choose to spend and how we communicate that. But I'd love to see more access to these kinds of products and them being developed for other audiences.
Great. I think really leading into that, now that you see a lot of change in these platforms, especially with storytelling and the rebrands, what are some of the trends and things that you're seeing change that excites you the most about all of it? Jag, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. I mean, I'm excited by the interest and consumer movements around sustainability and the demands for transparency and traceability. I'm worried about kind of that leading to false claims and greenwashing, which is obviously happening. And I'm hoping that consumers get, educate themselves like we are, and we resource ourselves and we ask the right questions and we push for like truth and transparency. So I think it's a curve, like it's a process. So I'm excited by it, but I'm also like cautiously optimistic.
Okay. Okay. Shama, you want to jump in?
Sure. I'm excited. I think that I think one of the things that's so wonderful about the future is that we're seeing when you think about, for me, it's always about who's spending the money, right? And how do we get them the right stuff? And so when it comes to the future of stuff and where we get it, I do think that there is new wealth that's being created in a number of different arenas, such as like, crypto and all these areas where we're starting to see new wealth with younger people who are thinking about more globalized futures and worlds that are better. And so I do feel very optimistic that with this kind of new wealth creation, there will be just increasingly more and more demand for these kinds of products. And where there's demand, there are opportunists and entrepreneurs who will jump in to be able to provide the solutions to that. So I'm very optimistic about the future of markets, of currency, and how we're kind of building wealth and spending money.
Great. Lori, you want to jump in?
Yeah. So in terms of storytelling, something that I've noticed throughout the pandemic is instead of people saying like, how are you? And like kind of glossing that over pre-pandemic, now it's like, no, really, how are you? And I think that's given people the opportunity to say, I'm not okay, and to share more stories, right? On LinkedIn, I see it on Medium. I think, people are finally willing to share. And so I think that kind of cracks it open, to what stories have people not been sharing. And I think that goes on to making it, more humanizing, but also, flowing into things, being able to, stop the greenwashing and being able to focus on the sustainability. Because I think as people become more transparent, those companies will too.
Okay. Shannon, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'd echo Lori. I'm excited by the people first movement that I'm kind of seeing. And I think that flows down into what a few other panelists said, but just the interest in consumer mindfulness, the interest in transparency. Where does this come from? What's in it? And so I hope we continue to make some of those more mindful communication changes. And even, you're seeing it obviously in the advertising changes, putting more healthy bodies on screens, sharing how we can become greener, more considerate of our world, work-life balance, encouraging the sharing of vulnerability and emotion. So I think it's kind of just all of that like human first movement that I'm seeing that I'm really excited about in storytelling.
I love that. And then I think that really goes into, the consumers now, like after the pandemic and everything, I feel like consumers are now becoming more aware and wanting to have a more positive impact on the world. And like, what are some of like the strategies that you're kind of building into your platforms to allow them to have more impact? Laura, you want to jump in?
Sure. So for my company, I'm doing communications for clients. A lot of it goes into thought leadership writing, really that transparency we were talking about, but also having people out there, right? If you're doing something really great, you should be on panels. You should be on, speaking on stages, virtual or otherwise. But I think that the strategies for the communications side is just get that out there as long as you're doing it and you're making an effort towards that. I'd be interested to hear what Shama and Jag say, on the fashion side.
Yeah. Shannon, you want to just go next and then we can jump over to fashion.
Yeah, absolutely. For us, I mean, I've kind of said this almost on every answer, but I think the strategy that we have is we've just had these like 3 or 4 brand statements that we put together, and we said this is, you know, who we are and what we're going to be, and this is how we're going to make sure that we're meeting that mark. And then no matter what we do, whether it's on the newsletter side, the editorial side, you know, the print side, we're always coming back to those and checking each other like, okay, that's a really good idea, does that align with this? Because if not, it's, we need to figure out a way to make it more impactful, or we need to figure out a way to bring more positivity out of it. Like I kind of talked about the clicks versus impact. And so making sure that we're far more on the impact side than ever on the searching for clicks side.
Love it. Love it. Okay, Jag, you want to jump in next?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about kind of activism. And so I was on a call this morning with some researchers and in trying to kind of get more data and information for the work that we do. And they track human rights violations in China at factories. And they were great because they were like, we don't just want to be researchers, we want to be activists. And so I love that. And I just thought, okay, how can, you know, we all need to be activists, right? We need to be on the front lines. And so I think, you know, thought leadership, activism, that's what it's all about.
Love it. And then Shama?
Well, what's interesting is, you know, I spend every day talking to founders and people who are building their businesses. And I think one of the biggest struggles that I've been working into or kind of trying to remedy is, you know, everyone looks at, you know, the 17 goals and they go, oh my gosh, how am I going to do all of these things in my business that I want to be sustainable? And, you know, I really want to achieve and do all these things. And I go, okay, guys, like let's focus, let's pick a few that we can do and do them well, right? Let's build into our business models things that we can actually do well, that we can actually be fact checked on, and that we can continue to do well. Because I think oftentimes when I see in fashion, or especially new entrepreneurs, is there is a desire to do everything, and then you end up not being able to do it all. And if you can hit all the metrics, right, all the goals, you can't do them consistently over time. And so I think what we need is not just players in the game who are, you know, one hit wonders, but people who are coming in to really build. And so I think the avenue that I'm really trying to build out with founders is let's find these areas where you have core interest, where it feels really true to your values, that you can stick by on these thought leadership platforms, that you can be speaking about, because there's nothing worse than someone who's greenwashing just to, you know, raise funding, raise awareness, you know, do all these things without being able to really stick to it. So I think consistency, less is more, and having it be something that's really authentic to your own values, I think is super important.
Love it. Completely agree with you on that. I've definitely seen it before with a lot of people who want to do everything, and you're like, just scale back and then grow. And then I think time's almost up, but my last question for you ladies is, you know, what is a piece of advice that you would give to a female entrepreneur, you know, as they're getting started on their journey, especially in this new age that we're in, you know, coming out of a pandemic, kind of still in a pandemic, with the shift of impact, with having mindful communication, like what would be your one word of advice? Jag, you want to kick it off?
Sure. I don't know about the rest of you, but I've been, you know, feeling really tired a lot over the past couple of years. And so it comes into my mind to quit. So one of the best pieces of advice is, if you're feeling tired, rest, but don't quit. That's what's kept me going.
Incredible. Lori?
So one of my favorite quotes is leap and the net will appear. I think in terms of entrepreneurship, that is a crucial piece of advice, and one I've lived by. I think, you know, taking those risks, calculated risks even, is really important to keep moving the business forward.
Thank you. Shannon?
Mine, don't try to please everyone. I think when you spend too much time trying to please everyone, you lose your authenticity, you lose yourself, and then it really funnels into you. You question your ideas, your business plans, and all of a sudden you're derailed about something where you're like, hold on, like my role is not to please you. My role is to run this the way that I think I can effectively run this to make an impact. So just staying focused on, yourself and not trying to please anybody else.
Thank you. And then Shama.
Run as fast or as slow as you need to. No one else knows how fast you need to run. No one knows how slow you need to go. So when it comes to like building and growing, I think sometimes we and applying ourselves, I think sometimes we get a little bit of, oh, we need more work-life balance. I think everyone knows what they need. So if I hear work-life balance one more time, I'm going to be like, you clearly are not in a job that you feel super aligned with, that you feel really committed to. That is like your thing, because when it is in and of you, your own rubber band. And so I think there's an element of integrity with self, as Shannon mentioned, and an element of mindfulness, right? I mean, go as fast or as slow as you need to go.
I love that. Yeah, I think a big part of coming into startup land is there's so much noise from everybody telling you what you should do and shouldn't do, and how fast to go or how slow to go, or and it's just like you got to be able to kind of clear that noise. So I definitely am in line with what you're saying. Well, I think that's time. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining us today and for taking the time to talk on this panel. It was so good getting to know you guys and having this conversation. Thank you, Logic Tree, for having me host, and I hope you all have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Bye.
Bye.